Hey everyone. One of you recently asked me a great question, which is how to know when you can fully open up to someone while dating. Basically, when can you tell that someone is trustworthy enough for you to share deep secrets with them? So, we all know that that's going to hinge greatly on the person's character. So, I want to share with you what these character traits are that you should pay attention to and give you a kind of rough timeline of about when you should have an idea of whether or not the person you're dating has these traits. So, some of the really big things here are honesty, authenticity, and integrity. If the person has these, then you usually should be able to trust them with personal information. Because people who are incredibly honest and authentic are more likely to open up to you, and then when you share in return, they're not going to tell other people because they're going to be trusting you to not share what they divulged with you. So it's very important that you pay attention to people who are being real with you, people who you can tell they're not putting on a facade, they're not pretending to be someone they're not. And paying attention to their actions here is really important. Most of the time, people can kind of fake it. They can pretend to be better than they really are. But once you start paying attention to their actions will usually give them away. For instance, if you're dating or if you're going on a date somewhere out in public, pay attention to how they treat other people. Are they someone who is rude to service workers or that sort of thing? Do they kind of treat other people like they don't even exist? Pay attention to that because if they're a good person, someone you can trust, they're likely going to be kind. So they're going to treat service workers well. They're going to treat everyone like a human being. The only thing I will say here is that some people have this awesome ability to create kind of like a magic bubble around you and them and kind of make the rest of the world seem like it doesn't exist. That's a different thing. So don't, if they're able to do that, don't mistake that for them not caring about the outside world. They're just good at really focusing in on the present moment and kind of creating that awesome dynamic between you and them. And this is something that I love being able to do myself. So don't think that that means they don't care about the outside world. So more so pay attention to when they're directly interacting with other people. Say when they're paying for food or something like that and they're engaged with the cashier, that sort of thing. Just see how they treat other people. But beyond that, a really important thing here is pay attention to whether or not you feel comfortable being your authentic self around this person. That right there is probably the biggest thing. If you feel like you can't be authentic with them, which usually means they are coming off like a judgmental person, then that right there tells you you should not open up to this person and probably, well, I can't fully say, but it's probably a good indicator that you wouldn't want to go beyond dating with them. You wouldn't want to get into a relationship with them because if you feel like you can't be authentic around them, then if you go further than dating, you're signing up for pain because being in a relationship with someone where you can't even be authentic is not fun. So don't sign up for that. But in general, that is a huge indicator of whether or not this person is trustworthy because you should trust them enough that you can be authentic around them. And with authenticity comes deeply opening up and sharing those secrets that you don't tell too many people. So, along with that, the next thing to pay attention to is see if they're judgmental. And if they are judgmental, they're constantly criticizing people or judging other people when you're out and about. That is not a good thing. You don't want someone who's like that because that judgment will inevitably be turned against you as well. And that's quite often the case where when we're around people who are judgmental, we don't feel like we can open up because we know that if we do, they're going to cast judgment on us. Even if they don't outright say it, they're going to be thinking it, and nobody wants to be judged, especially women. For all the men out there, pro tip, women do not like being judged, so don't judge them. That's one of the easiest ways to connect with women is just to stop being judgmental. Just start being more free and accepting. Everybody's lived their own life, everybody's done different things, and society often conditions us to think certain things are wrong when they're really not. So just practice being less judgmental. It'll really help you connect with not even just women, but everyone in general, because nobody likes a judgmental person. So that's another thing to really pay attention to. But The last thing I'll say here is, well, before I get into the timeline, is have they opened up to you as well? If the other person hasn't opened up to you, then that's a sign that they can't be authentic themselves and maybe they don't trust you enough to open up. And that's not exactly a great sign, because usually the way things work when we're dating with people is people open up mutually. One person will share something deep about them, and then the other person shares something about themselves. It's not usually a one-way street. So if that person is struggling to open up to you, then that's a good sign that you probably shouldn't open up to them and share your deep secrets, because there's something holding them back and you don't know what it is, but the fact that it's there isn't a good sign. So sometimes all these things take a bit of time to get to know, but I would say in terms of timeline, you usually will have a good idea of what the other person is like by around the third date or so. Sometimes it may take a bit longer, especially if the person is a bit more conservative in terms of dating. I don't mean politically, but if they have kind of conservative ideals when it comes to dating, and they're one of those people who want to wait until marriage before, doing the bedroom Olympics, then things are going to go a bit more slowly with them, and they're probably going to open up a bit more slowly with you as well. But for the most part, I would say the third date is kind of like the area where if you two haven't opened up to each other by then it's kind of a bad sign. But again, I can't make that a blanket statement because everyone is different. But I would say around then, usually you'll have a good idea of whether or not you can trust this person enough to open up to them. And usually the third date is, I wager, where most people will open up to each other, because that is usually also the socially acceptable day to engage in the bedroom Olympics. And once that hurdle is passed, most people feel a lot more comfortable opening up in general. So around then is a good indicator, but usually you should be able to open up before then, even, like, well, before the bedroom Olympics, should I say. But there's some people it is a bit sooner. It all depends on whether or not they have that honesty, that authenticity and integrity. If they've got those qualities, if they're a trustworthy person, then you will be able to tell usually pretty quickly, because they're going to stand out from the crowd, because those qualities are so rare. Very few people have them. And I mean, I can tell you from my own experience, there have been very few people where I feel completely comfortable being 100% myself around them. And the funny part about that is I feel completely comfortable speaking to you guys. Okay, obviously there are some things I wouldn't exactly share on video, but for the most part, I feel really comfortable speaking to you guys and sharing things with you. And yet there are women out there who just I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that with. So it's kind of funny to me how I view like you guys in a different light to women, and I have no trouble opening up to you, but would with certain women. It all goes back to that, to whether or not if they're judgmental, because judgmental people just bottle us up. Nobody likes that energy. So yeah, anyway, I'm starting to ramble at this point, but I hope you see what I mean in this video, and I hope you can realize that what qualities to pay attention to, and around when you should have a good idea of whether or not the other person has these qualities. But it always just comes down to watching their actions and seeing whether or not they're opening up to you, whether or not they're being honest and speaking freely without judgment, that sort of thing. And if they're doing those things, you should be able to trust them with opening up to them and starting to let them know those deeper aspects of your personality and sharing things that you don't share with too many people. It's a very beautiful thing, but it does suck how there are so few people who we can truly do this with. I mean, I can tell you, I always enjoy those dates the most, where I feel like I'm able to open up myself to the woman and have her open up in return. And I've been told some really interesting and almost crazy things from women about stuff that's happened to them in the past. And not all of it's great, but it always feels very, I guess, I don't know the word to describe it, almost like heartwarming when they trust you enough to share those things with you. It's incredible. It's a very beautiful, visceral thing, because it's just, yeah, you're like creating this awesome bubble with you and her, where you're just creating this area of non-judgment. I don't like to use the term safe space because that term doesn't mean much to me anymore with how it's been used, but you're basically creating a, yeah, judgment-free zone between you and her, and it's an incredible place to be. So I wish you all the best of luck in finding people like this, but these are just the things to pay attention to so that you know when you've actually met someone who is this way. Anyway, I'll stop rambling now. I hope this video helped you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Arrivederci!